Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Earlier in the week I recorded or uploaded my video doing my review of the Call of Cthulhu 7th edition starter set. In that video I had mentioned that that set I would place sort of near the very top of my favorite starter set type products that I've ever owned. And it was actually suggested in the comments that I actually do sort of a listing of my preference for the different starter sets that I have. And it just seemed like a really fun idea. I enjoyed doing the list of like D&D editions in order of my personal preference, and I thought the response was actually way better to that video than I was expecting. I will just get this out of the way, of course. I don't own every starter set that's ever been released for every role-playing game, so there obviously, I can only talk about things that I own. It's my own personal list, so if my favorite thing or least favorite thing, for example, is your favorite thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad product. It just doesn't appeal to me personally, and I'll try to explain my reasons why I rank things sort of where I do. In fact, there's even some products that I really like that just when I look at other things that I also really like, I just sort of had to place them lower on the list, and it's unfortunate, but it's just sort of the way that that things can go sometimes. So with that in mind, let's just dive right into it, shall we? So coming in at the bottom of the list, so I'm going to go from bottom to top. So this is sort of my least, the set that I'm least enamored with or least impressed with, going to my personal favorite. So my least favorite, and this might again upset some people, but it just, again, I'll explain my reasons for it, is the Stranger Things 5th edition D&D starter set. So this is actually, like I said, this is a sealed copy. I've mentioned this in other videos before. I had actually picked up 2 copies, one to keep sealed and one that I was going to open up and actually, do stuff with. I actually did a giveaway on my Patreon back when I had my Patreon. I did a giveaway for the open product because I just honestly didn't see me really having any more use for it. And I'll keep the sealed one just to have the item in my collection, because at the moment at least I am trying to collect all of the like actual role-playing supplements for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. So I've done unboxing videos, I think, for pretty much everything that I'm talking about, or I've shown the contents for everything that I'm talking about. But in this is one of the sets that came out before Wizards of the Coast sort of revised what types of things they included in their starter sets. So this is kind of sparse. You get a rule book, you get an adventure book, you get a set of 6 polyhedral dice, I think it is, and you get 2 of the Demogorgon figures, one of which is unpainted, the other is painted. And by painted, I mean they painted like the inside of the mouth pink, and then they used the same paint to do like a wash of the mini, and that's really sort of it. The biggest reason that this is my lowest ranked one is at the time it came out, this was $35 Canadian, and that was the price I was being charged everywhere. At least, in the city that I live in, which is the capital city of the province that I'm in, this was the standard price for it. That did change as the Essentials kit came out, and this, if the 2 things being the same price just didn't really quite work. So the reason that I'm not a big fan of this one is it's all pre-made characters, which, is fine. A lot of starter sets do that, so I'm not necessarily going to say that this is my least favorite because it's pre-generated characters. But the adventure itself is sort of mixed in terms of quality. If they were trying to emulate an adventure that felt like it was written by a child or someone that was younger, they did sort of succeed in that, which, if that's what they were going for, then that's great. There were some clever, interesting moments in the adventure, but then there were also really heavy-handed railroaded sections. Like there was this one NPC, I mentioned this before, that just arrives once the characters enter the Upside Down, I think it's called. I haven't watched the show. I'm actually not overly interested. I hate to say it, but I'm just not. But once they enter this alternate plane, this NPC will just arrive to tell them what they need to do. So it's not like a puzzle-solving thing. It's not a situation where they have to try to use their wits to figure it out for themselves. An NPC will just literally ex machina tell them what they need to do. But that's not enough, because if the characters decide to attack this individual, instead of providing statistics or just having something like they have, they're high enough level that the party can't conceivably defeat them in one round. So just have the person teleport away as their tactic, right? Instead, they are immune to damage. They get multiple attacks per round, and they auto hit and they auto crit, and I think they automatically do max damage. I could be wrong on that last part, but I know that they did automatically hit and automatically crit every single attack, which is just really kind of a ridiculous way of doing it. And the two Demogorgon figure minis is, I mean, it's again, this is 100% completely and totally meant to appeal to fans of the show. It is a licensed product, and licensed products, by their very nature, are meant to appeal to the fan base for that license. And that's not me. Like I said, I'm not really interested in watching Stranger Things. I know a lot of people really love it. It just doesn't. I tried watching the first episode and I just didn't get into it, and I didn't bother going back to it. So, for that reason, for the reason that the painted mini doesn't really look that different from the unpainted mini, aside from a wash and just one color done inside the mouth. Like, not even the teeth were done with like a dry brush or anything. It's just literally just a pink splotch in the middle and a pink wash. The adventure itself, like I said, is kind of railroaded. There are some good moments in it, like the beginning of it I thought was really, really cool. There was this maze sequence that I really enjoyed, but just the ex machina of this NPC just showing up to tell them what they need to do once they enter this place, having them encounter the Demogorgon monster in the adventure, I don't know, just again felt kind of cash grabby. But the worst of it is the fact that the monster section of this book literally just copies and pastes all the creatures, all the monsters from the original 5th edition starter set, without making any efforts to incorporate a third of them. For example, you have the young green dragon, you have the flame skull, you have the evil mage, you have the spectator. All those creatures are in the original 5th edition starter set, but they're also in this one, and they're never used. Now, you could say that it's designed to give you some monsters to work with if you want to create your own adventures, which is fair, but I don't really feel like this steers you towards doing that. This is called Starter Set, but I don't think there's any plans to release any other products that would use these characters or continue the storyline started here. And overall, I don't know, it just doesn't work for me. But if there are people out there, again, that are huge fans of the show, love the starter set and have played it and enjoy it, then that's awesome, because every single one of these products is going to be someone's favorite. Every single one of these products is going to be someone's least favorite. It's just the nature of opinions. But for me, this was just really difficult to get enthusiastic over. And the more that I looked through it, the harder it was for me to sort of, again, enjoy it. I always said way back when that the Stranger Things idea of a Stranger Things RPG, I think is a cool idea, but it's something that should be done with a revival of the D20 modern system instead. And I think it would be great for that. I think it would absolutely be perfect for that. There is a role-playing game, I think it's called Kids Riding Bikes, or something along those lines. I did pick up one of their free RPG day sample products, but I never really looked through it at this point in time yet. So there is something out there if that's what you're interested in. But anyway, I spent a lot of time talking about this one, but I just really wanted to justify why I personally would put this at the bottom of my list. Alright, coming up next, so I guess my second least favorite, and this was a tough one. Really, everything after the Stranger Things set, getting into my top 3 or 4, was really difficult to really pin down and try to put in order. But honestly, I have to go with the 3.5 basic game as sort of the second bottom of my list. Now again, this is a really cool product. I did an unboxing of it, And there's some interesting stuff in here. So this actually includes plastic minis from the D&D minis product line that was going on at the time. And the adventure itself was kind of interesting. It also includes like cardboard, like large cardboard tiles that you use. They're double-sided to build the dungeon, which is kind of neat, although it's also a little bit of a setback, I think, for the product as a whole. And the adventure was interesting, and there were some cool moments to it. But what ultimately holds this back is the fact that it's one adventure, and it's pre-made characters, but the pre-made characters are done in a very stripped down version of the regular game, the regular 3rd edition game. So as far as teaching how to really play the system, I think this comes up just a little bit short. You'll get the basics of it, which, you know, it is called the basic game, so I sort of get that. But having it such a simplified version of the characters, I just don't really think works in its favor. The one adventure, while interesting, is just one adventure. And that it steers you pretty much from that one adventure to, hey, why don't you go buy, you know, the core rulebooks, so you can begin designing your own games. The tiles itself, like I said, they're a nice inclusion. They are nicely designed. But the problem is that because they're double-sided, and the adventure uses all 8 sides of like the 4 tiles, you can't actually lay out the full dungeon at any given time. You will have like adjoining tiles and rooms and stuff like that, but there may be times where someone just wants to go back to a previous room to either like rest, or they leave the dungeon and come back, and it would have been kind of nice to have a situation where you could just lay out the entire dungeon. Even if it was just the dungeon was just the 4 tiles, and then have a second adventure that you can do that uses the other side, and maybe even, in a crazy sort of roundabout way, maybe even a third adventure, or at least a configuration of the tiles for a third adventure, some monsters that are included for you to populate that dungeon with, and go from there. I like, there was a lot of cool things in here. The minis were nice, which was really the main reason I think most people were buying this in the first place. So it was great for that purpose. As far as the quality, like I said, the one adventure was okay. It did have a really cool moment in it that I'm not going to spoil here. But overall, I just feel that, again, it falls a little bit short of, really, to me, I don't see this as the way that I would want to introduce someone to 3.5 D&D, if I'm going to be completely and totally honest. So that's why it's sort of at this part of the list. All right, coming in, I guess, third from the bottom, I have, and this, again, was another really tough decision, but I'm going to have to put the original D&D 5th edition starter set in here. The biggest reason for that is Wizards of the Coast have put out better sets since this one. This really comes down to 2 issues, in my opinion. Number 1 is the lack of character creation. Now you can get a free PDF version of the basic rule set, which was used to create these characters, so there is a way without spending additional money to get those rules, but I think that a starter set, one of the things that it really should strive to do is teach everyone how to get into the game, which includes teaching players how to make characters. The characters that they included were okay. You had like an elven wizard, dwarf cleric, I think, and then you had like the halfling rogue, and then you had the 2 human fighters. One was basically a ranger, which is something that I will talk about in another set coming up. But one of them is basically, so they use light armor, they have a higher dex, they use ranged weapons, and then you have the human noble, which was like the heavy armor and the 2-handed weapon style. Again, it's a bit of a situation where it would have been nice to create your own character, because maybe you want to play a fighter, but you want to focus on sword and shield and not 2-handed, or, you know, if you're going to have a fighter style character that wears light armor and uses a bow, I really feel like they should have just included the ranger class or done something maybe a little bit different. But it's not the characters aren't the worst. I mean, like I said, there's not necessarily, I wouldn't call them like a necessary completely negative part of the set. It's just, again, I would have liked character creation options, and the characters are kind of uninspired. I think from the way that they're designed, it just seems like it's the stereotypes, which again might work for teaching beginners, but they are at least fully designed, and the characters use the exact same sheet, the exact same abilities, the exact same skills as you would get from the full rule set. So that is definitely something in its favor. The adventure itself is also quite good, actually, and it takes the characters all the way from first level up into fifth level, which sounds like a lot. But the problem with 5th edition that I'm really starting to find is that first and second level are such an oversight, like you blast through them so quickly that they may as well not be there. It takes 300 experience points to go from first level to second level, where in other versions of the D&D game, no character got second level before 1,000 experience points. And by the time you reach 1,000 experience points, you're already into third level. So I think that's a little bit of a setback, in my opinion, is just how quickly you go through those lower levels. And while the one adventure in there is great and has some really cool moments in it, there's just not a lot of bang for your buck in this set. It is, I think, the cheapest of the 5th edition starter sets. I want to say that's probably come down in price since the release of future sets, which is good, but even for the amount of money that I paid for it, I paid a similar amount for a set that I'm going to show later on in this video, and you just got so much more. And that's really kind of hard to get past. You get the adventure book, you get the rule book, you get the ready-made characters, and then you get a set of 6 dice, and that's it. That's everything that comes in here. So while I think the adventure is great, and I do recommend that people play through it, and while I think that this isn't, the worst thing that you can pick up for your collection, it is still kind of hard to really fully feel like you got your money's worth out of a box set when it's just kind of like half of the box is taken up by a divider. So I do feel a lot more strongly in favor of this set than I used to. Like, I used to really, really dislike it. But reflecting on this, the idea for this video, and looking at other sets that I have that I would want to rank higher based off what's included, it is difficult to put this really any higher in the list. So unfortunately, this is where it sits. Alright, up next, again, this was sort of another tough decision, but this is going to be the 3rd edition 3.0 Dungeons & Dragons adventure game. So this is sort of the starter set to get you into 3.0. This came out in like early, or I guess mid-2000, because it was in the summer of 2000 that the 3rd edition rule set was released. So this came out around that same time. This has some of the issues that the basic game had. So it has the characters are basically the exact same kind of style. It's very simplified and stripped down from what you could make using the full rules. The thing that really sets this apart, however, is it comes with a double-sided poster map, one side of which is a dungeon with like a series of dungeon rooms, but the other side was blank, so you could do whatever you wanted to with that map. It's not dry erase or anything like that, but you could use, we use Jenga blocks basically to build dungeon walls and stuff like that. So that map came in really, really handy. In fact, the map inside, I'm reluctant to even unfold it anymore, because it had gotten used so much that where you were folding the map up, it's actually starting to just over time just tear on its own, not through like any force or pressure put on it, just from being folded and unfolded so many times. So we got a lot of use out of that. It used cardboard tokens instead of minis, which was fine. It did work. But the reason that I'm ranking this higher than the 5th edition starter set and higher than the 3.5 basic game is the fact that this actually includes a booklet with 6 different adventures in there. So there's a little bit more flavor to this product. One of the adventures, so each of the first 5 adventures uses a smaller portion of the dungeon map. And then you have like door tokens that you can place to create like the entrances to the rooms and things of that nature. But the final adventure uses the entire map. So I think it just did a really good job of that. It doesn't do a great job, again, of teaching character creation or giving you a fully realized or fleshed out character. Like, you really wouldn't want to take the characters introduced in this set and into an ongoing long-term 3.0 D&D campaign. So this is just sort of designed to get your feet wet, and it does an okay job of that, but the amount of adventures, the inclusion of the map, and the usefulness of having just a blank grid on the other side of this map cannot be understated how important, or overstated how important that was to us early on. So that's why it gets a higher placing on the list than, say, the 3.5 basic game, or again with the D&D 5th edition original starter set. All right, up next we have, or I should say, the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game starter set. This was, again, sort of a difficult thing for me to place exactly where I wanted it to. At one point I had it beneath the adventure game, and at other points I had it, kind of where it is now, and I'm just going to stick to where it is at this point in time. So the reason for that is it doesn't, it has preset characters, which was the same thing as all the other sets that I've looked at so far, so I really can't fault it for that. And it's a bit limited in the scope of what you do. Like, it doesn't teach character creation at all, but it did get me interested in wanting to explore this game a little bit more. The only thing that's been holding me back is the price of the core rulebook, which is like 90 some odd dollars, I think, at some of the stores that I've seen in my local area. And that's just more money than I want to spend on something that I'm, interested in, but not sure if it was something that I would find myself running long term. I also have, the Starfinder role-playing system as well, so if I want something in space, I can sort of use that to placate that interest or desire. This is obviously more of your traditional science fiction, which people get really defensive over if you call anything with fantasy elements science fiction, even though it does use some elements of science to explain, like propulsions or technology, and it is fictional, but anyway, it's definitely a hot button topic that I don't fully understand. I think that you can be science fiction and be just like science fiction, tech oriented, or science fiction fantasy oriented. I think both of those things can apply, but anyway, that's a whole other thing. But this set does include all the things that you need to run a scenario. There were a few different adventures, little mini adventures included in the set, so you get a little bit of variety with the things that you can do. Also, it lets you be a crew member of a Galaxy-class starship, and as someone who grew up on The Next Generation, that in itself is pretty awesome. So while it's lacking in certain elements, it does have the dice that you need to play. It does have some maps that you can use for like combat situations, and it does have me interested in the full rule set. Like I said, it's just the price of that's holding me back. But overall, I think that this is a pretty solid way to develop interest in this system, so that's why I ranked it a little bit higher on my list. Alright, so coming up next, we have the Dungeons & Dragons vs. Rick and Morty set. This actually doesn't refer to itself as a starter set like the Stranger Things did, which I think was sort of a smart move, because I don't think they're really going to follow up on this, and I don't think they're going to follow up on the Stranger Things set, but this does a lot of things just better than the Stranger Things set does. So there's no minis included, but you do get a full set of 11 dice, which includes 2d20s, the percentile dice, and 4d6, which is great. It includes the adventure book, it includes the rule book, it includes pre-made characters, and I'll touch on those in a little bit. But it also comes with a DM screen, and that's just sort of a really cool inclusion in this product here. And sort of that, along with the dice, is what made me obviously want to like it more than the Stranger Things set, but it does a couple of things better, and it does one thing kind of meh. So the thing that it does better is, like the Stranger Things set, it does pretty much copy and paste all of the enemies from the original 5th edition starter set. So it has your Spectator Beholder, it has your Green Dragon, it has your Flame Skull, it has, like the Nothic, and all those different things are included in here as they were in the original starter set. But the adventure contained within, and it is only one adventure, unfortunately, but again, with the licensed tie-in product, it is what it is. But the adventure does a much better job utilizing all of those monsters. There may be one or two that may not appear in the adventure itself, but the main ones, like the Green Dragon, the Spectator, the Flame Skull, the things that were kind of conspicuous by their presence in the Stranger Things set, are actually used in this adventure and done really well. So the screen is great, the dice set's great, it does come in like the Morty colors of yellow and blue, which is kind of a nice little touch. If I had to say any one negative thing about this set, is that it uses the exact same characters, almost, as the original starter set. The only difference is that Morty, instead of being a halfling rogue, is a half-orc rogue. And instead of there being the dwarf cleric, you have Jerry, which is, I think he was a half-elf cleric. So you have the half-elf and half-orc. But you still have, the cleric, the mage, then you have the thief, and then you have the 2 fighters. And this is where my biggest sort of nitpick comes with this, is because Summer's character, who goes by the name of Ari, she is a ranger. In the comics, she is a ranger. And then they have a completely made-up character for this set called Meatface. I was really hoping he was going to be in Dungeons and Dragons versus Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons Volume 2, but he wasn't. He just wasn't there. He is a wholly unique creation, I think, for this starter set. But he is, again, he wears I think he's wearing light armor. But he's got low intelligence, high strength, and uses like 2-handed weapon, and he just screams barbarian. Just as Summer screams ranger. And yet they went with the fighter folk hero and fighter noble characters that we had from the original starter set. So that was a bit of a letdown. Unfortunately, I think that they could have done a much better job of just like introducing the fact that, make her a ranger, make him a barbarian, and that's fine. If you want to use the defense that, well, they're not in the basic rules, I don't think half-orc or half-elf are in the basic rules either, and yet we have them here. I think even Beth's character is a half-elf. I think the only human, maybe the mage might be human too. No, I think she was the cleric. She was the cleric, sorry. He was the... Jerry's character was the wizard. So like they've already introduced races that aren't in the basic rules. So why not just take that extra step and have the characters be the class that they really should be anyway, like ranger and barbarian. That's sort of like the biggest nitpick that I had with it, though. Otherwise, this one felt a lot more worth the money for what you paid for it, and it is a licensed product, and I guess there's going to be a little bit of personal bias here. The whole list is essentially personal bias. But I am a fan of Rick and Morty versus I'm not a huge fan of Stranger Things. But I will say that overall, I feel like they did a much better job building a fun sort of Rick and Morty themed adventure and gameplay. Not to mention Rick's little observations in these like sidebars on some of the pages I think are a nice little touch as well. So I think that more care went into making this set than Stranger Things, which felt like copy paste and just throw in still images from the show, and people will buy it. I think they did a much better job with this one. Alright, so we are about halfway through the video. I wasn't actually keeping track of how many sets that I was going to talk about in this video. I just grabbed the stuff off my shelves. But as it turns out, I've gone through 6, and there are 6 more to go. So coming in at number 6 on my list is something that does stretch the definition of a starter set, in that you do need to have a set of dice already or to purchase alongside of it in order to be able to properly play it. So that's sort of the one thing that I would say is sort of an issue with just being able to buy the box and play it. But I still wanted to talk about it anyway, because it is the introduction to another role-playing game, and there were products that came out after it. And this was sort of at a time which Wizards of the Coast was trying to push their role-playing dice anyway. So I can kind of see why they didn't include, and because it was based off of one of their versions of the D&D role-playing game, I think the idea was that the people picking this up are probably already going to be, people who have dice. So it stretches things a little bit, but I still want to talk about it because I do have a few things to say, and that is the Gamma World role-playing game. So this was a box set that came out in, I think, around 2010. So this was during the 4th edition era of the Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game. It uses the 4th edition style rules, although there is a bit of a twist on it, which I'll talk about in a moment. So the reason that I consider this to be essentially a starter set is it did what a lot of these other sets kind of did for me, and that was to help get me interested in, wanting to learn the system and purchase other things from it. And this was the first of these sets that I actually did that with. So I bought this box, I really enjoyed it, and I went out and got the two sets that came out afterwards. So it accomplished that goal. It is aimed at beginners, and it does give you the whole character creation system. And honestly, that's kind of the interesting thing about this list, that I didn't even realize when I was putting things in the order that I was finally going to talk about them in, is that the bottom six rely solely on ready-made characters that are in the box and good to go, whereas the top six all give you character creation options. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting little aspect of this that wasn't intentional, but now that I look at it, it's kind of cool that it worked out that way. So with this, like I said, this came out during the 4th edition era, and this was an era in which everything Wizards of the Coast did was met with this huge level of negativity and criticism. And one of the things that always sort of annoyed or frustrated me about this point in time was the sheer amount of people that hated these products, would be very vocal about it, but were not willing to actually try playing them. It would not be unusual to see social media posts or to see vlog posts or even comments on videos where it's like, well, this is like the worst thing that ever come out and I can't stand it, or, I hate everything about it. And someone would say, so you played it, right? And you actually tried it? And the response is like 80% of the time, the response would be, no, it's so bad, I'm not even going to bother wasting my time trying it. So it always felt like there's just a lot of ignorance towards Wizards of the Coast. And some of it they brought upon themselves, and I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, I feel like people missed out on some really cool products and some really great fun games because of this perceived hatred of everything Wizards of the Coast was doing. I mentioned the same thing about the Dungeon Command tabletop sort of like miniature skirmish game, and that was something that also got a lot of negativity and a lot of hatred-fueled feedback on by a large group of people who would never actually try to play the game because, well, it's a mini game that doesn't have dice, so it's not a real minis game, and I'm not going to waste my time on it. And it was just the common thread throughout, between 2008 and up to 2014, which 5th edition finally came out. This game is a lot of fun. It's not a game that takes itself seriously. There's a lot of humor built into written into the writing of the rule book, the adventures. It's something that is meant to be just a fun little side thing. This isn't going to be probably like your super long-term, 3-year-long role-playing campaign, but it's something that you could do for a few weeks, a few months, maybe even a year, and actually have some fun with it. The game does also introduce a card system, which Wizards was trying out at the time. There were cards in 4th edition as well that were fully optional. In this game, they're actually built into the system, but what they are is like random technology that you can find, so it's sort of like a random treasure deck. And then you can obviously take on mutations as this sort of like a radioactive wasteland. So in this game, the mutations are also determined by drawing these cards at random. And I think that adds actually kind of a fun element to it. So I think this is, again, sort of an underrated game. It does stretch the definition of a starter set, and I do sort of get that and know that. But of the ones that I've talked about so far, this is one that I would want to run probably before the other ones, just because it's something different, and this set did get me into Gamma World in general. I don't own much other Gamma World stuff, but this did really kind of pique my interest in it, so I think it deserves talking about there. So it's one of those things that, again, I think it got a bad rap. I really loved it, and this box set here got me into purchasing the other products that came out to support this. So there we go. All right, up next at number 5, we have the Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition Essential Starter Set. So this came out in 2010, and it was sort of, it wasn't, there's a little bit of confusion, I think, when it comes to D&D Essentials, and some people say that it is basically the same thing as what 3.5 was to 3.0, and I don't think that's 100% true in this case. D&D Essentials was something that you could run alongside of the hardcover books. There were certain things that you'd want to take from Essentials over the original, like Magic Missile automatically hitting. In the original 4th edition, it was like an ability you could use an unlimited number of times per day, but to offset that, there was an attack roll. It did D6s if it hit versus like D4s with the previous editions. But so they did incorporate some errata or make some rule changes there. But otherwise, there's a lot of ability to use both Essentials books and the hardcovers at the same time without there being a huge clash in compatibility, like there would be with 3.0 and 3.5. The starter set here was fantastic, and this starter set got me into 4th edition D&D. And 4th edition D&D is among my favorite versions of the game, despite, again, what all the people will say about it. And I owe that to this set. So I picked this up in stores. It was relatively cheap. I think it was the same price as the 5th edition starter set, but for that, you get character creation rules that take the form of a solo adventure, actually, which is kind of cool. So you can go through this choose your own adventure thing and build your character going through that. It has a rule booklet which is part of that adventure, I think. And then there is the adventure included inside, which is a cool adventure. I've actually run it a few times, including running it for 5th edition without really changing anything. I just took the monster stats, like if something called for a bugbear, I just used a bugbear. If something called for a goblin, I just used a goblin. And it worked really, really well. It was actually a lot of fun to run the adventure. But on top of that, you get the poster map that goes along. It's double-sided, goes along with the adventure itself. And then you get the punch-out tokens for the characters, for the monsters. You get the set of dice, and you also get these cards that you can use for referencing your class abilities, as well as some of the treasure you could find. So just a lot of value for your dollar. And the fact that this set exists for the price that it was at, being the same price as the original 5th edition D&D starter set, is going to be the reason forever going forward that I kind of hold the pricing structure of that original 5th edition starter set against it, because for the same price, you got so much more in a set that only came out a few years prior. I know inflation is a thing, but I don't think it's that much of a thing. So this just included so much great stuff, and again, character creation rules, which I love. I think that these sets should teach you to make characters that you can then port over into the finalized rule set. So we have that, and this one does a decent job of that, along with some other really cool stuff like the reference cards, like the tokens, like the maps. Just really great stuff overall. All right, coming in at number 4, we have the Dungeons & Dragons Essentials Kit for 5th edition D&D. Another reason why the 5th edition starter set is as low on this list now as it was. It's like, if I made this video a year ago, then the 5th edition starter set would probably be around this place. It might be just beneath the 4th edition one, but it would have been higher. But the fact that this set exists is what lowers that one to where it is. So this has a lot of the things that people were sort of complaining about not being included in the original starter set. This has maps. They're not poster maps for minis, but they are at least maps of the region, of the town that is sort of your base of operations. So you have that. You also have character creation rules. You actually build your characters to play this game. So you don't have the ready-made characters that you have to like just divvy up and choose from. Everyone can make the character that they want to make using the information that's in here. It does have the same character class and race options that we had in the original starter set, but it also includes the Bard, which at first I thought it was sort of an unusual choice, but it was sort of pointed out to me in the comments, and the more I thought about it, the more it made sense, is that the Bard is sort of the catch-all character. It can fill any role that's missing from the other characters, so it has like the skills of a rogue. It has spell casting that you have some healing magic, or you have some damage dealing magic that can kind of take the place of the wizard or the cleric. And they don't really have much fighting ability, but I want to say that it was College of Valor that was in here, which sort of makes that work. I could be wrong on that. It's been a little while since I looked through it, but it does make sense when you actually think about it. Also included in this set are a complete set of 11 polyhedral dice, so 4d6, percentile, and 2d20 on top of just the regular dice you would get in most of these sets. And it has a DM screen with a really I love the artwork on the front of that screen. The information on the back of the screen is the same information as the DM screen reincarnated. So when I said there was a lot of great stuff that I liked about this screen, and that I would love to see them release one that's like the thicker cardstock, they did sort of already do that, but I completely forgot about that because I didn't like the artwork of the DM screen reincarnated. It's like the big red dragon is cool, but it's not as colorful or as interesting as the original DM screen or the screen included in here. The adventure structure in here is also kind of interesting in that it is sort of one overall theme, but the adventures themselves are actually small little, almost like side quests that you do. And it kind of has like a video game kind of feel to it. There's like a job board you can go to, and you can take on these different quests, and they're all designed to be done within a session or like 2 sessions at the most. But that's not a bad thing. I think it's actually kind of a clever way to do things, and you get a lot of stuff in with that. So there's a lot of potential stories to go through. There's a lot of different quests to sort of go through, and you could use this a few different times and maybe have the characters choose some of the different adventures. So I think that's kind of a cool way to do it. I like that idea. I like that structure to it. And this is literally Wizards of the Coast listening to feedback from the 2 previous starter sets, which were the original one and the Stranger Things set, and just putting something together that is 100% worth every cent that you spend on it. So because Wizards of the Coast finally listened and finally put something together that addressed a lot of the shortcomings of the previous set, I have to rank this higher than any of the other ones for 5th edition because of that. So fantastic stuff, and I want to see more things like this coming out from Wizards of the Coast going forward. Alright, so now we are into our top 3. So coming in at number 3, and this top 3 is really a tough choice because honestly, it's almost like a 3-way tie. All of these are amazing. All of these have some fantastic aspects to them. But I decided sort of on the order that I did, and we're just going to go with it. So coming in at number 3 is the old school Moldvay D&D basic set from the early 1980s. This was actually given to me by Bill from Roll. Excuse me. This was actually given to me by Bill from Roll Stats. He sent this to me in a package with some other things, and I've still just been blown away by how amazing this set is. So in the video entitled Opening a Package from Roll Stats, I do open this up fully, but this is, I'll do it again, even though I didn't do it with any of the sets, I will do it again just really quick here to show that it is fully complete. So it has the rule booklet, it has the adventure, it has the original dice, and the original crayon to fill in those dice. Like, this is how long ago this was. Everything in this set is pristine, but I'm not necessarily looking at it from that perspective, even though that is a incredible, unbelievable thing. What I'm looking at is, this is the set that introduced an entire generation of people to tabletop role-playing, and it can't be understated how important that is. There was the Holmes Basic as well, but I don't know how widespread that was. I've never seen it in Nova Scotia, and everyone that I know that lives in Nova Scotia has said that they never seen it, even though they were people that would have bought it at the time, because they had the Zero Edition stuff, and did pick this up when it came out. So they would have picked it up if they would have seen it. But anyway, there was a lot of importance to this set. The reason that I'm ranking it at number 3, like I said, this could easily be number 2, this could easily be number 1 on this list. The reason that I'm ranking it at number 3, for me personally, is I don't myself have the nostalgia for it, but I recognize the importance of it. And like I said, it's basically a 3-way tie at this point. This is just the order that I'm choosing to talk about them in. So this has your basic rule booklet, which, again, this sort of stretches the definition of a starter set a little bit, in that this is part of like the finalized rules that came out for it, because there was the expert rules that required this as well. But at the same time, I included the Gamma World one because I wanted to talk about this one, and they're both sort of in that same category of they're like the rule set in of themselves. The one thing about this is that you did have to buy another box set to get expanded rules, but the two had to work together, sort of thing. This also includes, so you build your characters. Again, you create your own characters with this box set. And it includes one of the most nostalgic adventures of all time, and that is B2, Keep on the Borderlands. Something that was a lot of people's first introduction to tabletop role-playing. And even though I only played a little bit of Keep on the Borderlands, I think for like 1 or 2 sessions, and it didn't go well, at least for my character, I still cannot, again, understate how important that adventure was to an entire generation of people. So this is something that, it is an introductory product. It is aimed at beginners. It is something that, it works within those confines. You can pick up the box and start playing immediately. You didn't have to purchase dice separately, which you did with the Gamma World one, but again, because I wanted to talk about this, I felt that I should talk about that one as well. So this is just a fantastic starter set. It's going to be one of the harder ones to find on this list, due to how long it's been out and how coveted it is, but I still want to talk about it a little bit on this list. So that, again, sort of a 3-way tie. I'm just going to talk about this one first, but again, to Bill, if you're watching this, I still can't thank you enough for this amazing gift. But anyway, we are going to move on to my top 2. Alright, so with the top 2, again, this really could be just a tie. It sort of is. Depending on the day of the week, I might have put these in the opposite order. But at number 2, I'm going to talk about the Starfinder Beginner Box. So first of all, this thing is hefty. This is a solid box. In this, you get character creation rules, which is awesome. It is a simplified version of the Starfinder role-playing game, so you can't quite take the characters from this set and put them seamlessly into a long-term Starfinder game. But it does get your feet wet. It does introduce you to the world and the flavor, and it still gives you like the class abilities and stuff that you would get in the role-playing game. The biggest thing really in this is just that you have to separate your hit points by hit points and stamina points, and that's one of the biggest things there. Anything else is just a matter of what they chose to go with for this introductory product, and I think they made the right choice in only having hit points instead of stamina and hit points, just because it can be a little bit confusing for people that are new. And this is aimed at people that are new or possibly interested in getting into tabletop role playing. The strengths about this is also it does have ready-made characters to play as well. So you can actually choose if you just want to pick up and play a game immediately. You can have the players look through the characters and choose the one that they want, or they can make their own. So I think it's the only set, I think, of the ones that I've talked about so far that do that give you the character creation option or the ready-made option and let you go. Of the ones that I've talked about so far. The adventure itself inside is great. The poster, the map that it gives you is really high quality, and it's double-sided. So the one side is the dungeon for the adventure that you're playing, and then the other side is blank. It looks like, sort of like a metallic floor type of thing. But it's designed for you to draw in your maps, and it is the same exact quality and materials as the ready-made maps that they sell, be it the basic terrain or the themed ones like the space station or urban crawl or things like that. So it's that exact same quality of stuff, which is fantastic. It does include the basic dice, which is like, I think, the six sets, or are there 6 or 7? There's 7 actually. This does give you the percentile dice, which is great. So there's just so much to love about this. The other major thing that I want to talk about here is that the rule set takes you, I think, from 1st to 4th level or something like that. But the adventure really only takes you from 1st to 2nd, and then beyond that, it gives you some monsters to work with, and it steers you towards writing your own adventures and gives you advice for designing your own adventures within this beginner box. And I think that again is a really fantastic inclusion. And it's one of those things that pushed this over the top for me. Is that it's like, here's an example of an adventure. And you still have character progression to go, so you can get the core rules now if you want, or you can start designing your own stuff to get the characters through the next couple of levels. And I think that that's a really, really great aspect of it. It also comes with pawns, the cardboard stand-up figures that you can use, which they have a whole product line of that as well, so it's great to see that in here too. Just overall a very, very solid product, and well worth, like I said, every single cent that I spent on this. In fact, this is my sealed copy. I actually have 2. I bought 2 of these, or sorry, I had 1 sent to me. I should clarify that. The one that I've opened up was sent to me, but even though I had 1 sent to me, I still went out and paid full retail price to have another one sealed for the purposes of just holding on to in my collection. So that's how much I loved this set, is that even though I had one sent to me for review purposes, I still went out and paid maximum retail to get another copy just to have, because I wanted to financially support this product. So that's how much I love this. So that was number 2. So number 1 is the starter set that started this whole video, and that is the Call of Cthulhu 7th edition starter set. I already did my review of it, so I don't want to go into too much detail. And again, this is sort of this is really interchangeable with the Starfinder one, in my opinion, because this gives you character creation rules and ready-made characters. So you can build your own investigator, or you can use one of the pre-made ones. It actually gives you both of those options. It comes with blank sheets. It comes with completed sheets in there as well. The character sheets, like the character creation rules in here, it uses the exact same character sheet as the actual finalized rule set. So even though the Starfinder one I think is really fantastic, this is the regular character sheet. So the sheets that are in here are the ones you would use for the regular role-playing game, even if you use the character creation system from the hardcover. That said, I own the hardcover, and I picked the hardcover up before I ran my first session, same day, but before I ran my first session, and I still went with the character creation system in the starter set because I think it's easier. I think it makes for more level playing field. Everyone sort of has the same stuff to work with, and it's just how they choose to arrange it. And this starter set gives me the character creation rules that I will probably use all the time going forward. So that's fantastic. The solo adventure was a ton of fun. I didn't fare very well, but that's not the fault of the adventure. It was just poor decision making and even poorer rolling. But it was a lot of fun, and I really, really enjoyed everything about going through that. And I do want to go through it again at some point, and I might even do it on camera, just to see how the changes sort of affect things. The other adventures included, again, also do a great job of easing you into the game. The first adventure is actually meant to be a one-on-one to get you comfortable running the game before you go into the other two adventures, which expand out and give you, are designed for a full party. So I think that, again, was a really just fantastic touch. It gives you the dice you need, and with this set, it really does sort of give you everything that you need to just run Call of Cthulhu games. Sure, there's other things included in the core rulebook, and I do think that if you're serious about this game, you should get the core rulebook. But you could probably go, you could go months with just the starter set. Because the character options are there, the rule set this isn't a system that's based off of leveling the way that other RPGs that I've talked about here today are. It's just a wonderful product overall, and you're not going to go wrong with really most of what I've talked about here today. But that said, I just really am really impressed with the starter set that we have here from Chaosium, and it deserves, in my opinion, to be at the very top, or at least near the very top of this list. So that was my ranking of the introductory box sets or starter sets from my collection. There's a lot that I don't have, so if your favorite wasn't included in here, it's just because I don't have it. And again, this was a personalized list, so if my favorite one or least favorite one was your favorite, don't take it personally. It's just, personal opinion of me versus the personal opinion that you have. And if my least favorite is your favorite and you've had a lot of fun running it, you've had a lot of fun or playing in it, and you have really awesome memories of it, then that's what is the most important thing, not where it falls on some random person on YouTube's list. The important thing is how much fun you've had with any of the ones that I've talked about today. So we'll just sort of leave it at that. But let me know in the comments below, what are some of your favorite starter set type products. The only thing that I ask again is you just be respectful, and everyone's going to have different opinions, and that's okay. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Take care.